Scouser.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Premier League show. Three Liverpool dudes taking a look at the Premier League because we sure don't want to look at Liverpool these days. Our match of the week was Arsenal versus Liverpool. Next week's match of the week, sadly, is going to be Liverpool again. This time it's going to be Manchester City against Liverpool. But before we get to our studs and duds, let's take a look at match day 10. Not a lot of shocking scores, guys, but we'll start with the Newcastle win against Brentford 5-1. We were talking in the pre-show fist fight over here, Bickler. Despite the score, you were saying it was not a justified blowout as you see it.
I don't know if I'd say it's not a justified blowout. I mean, Newcastle's a really good side, right? But I think honestly, the chances, the statistics bore out. It was a pretty dominant Newcastle victory. Yeah. I felt from a game flow standpoint, I felt it was pretty competitive. I thought Brentford did all right. It wasn't like they were dominated possession. Possession was on nearly 50-50. I just feel like, in critical moments, Newcastle came up with big plays, and Newcastle defended well and was clinical, which is what they've been all year. And if you put those two together, you're going to beat some teams. They just happen to have some good chances, and I think 5-1 is probably unfair against the run of play as to what actually the game flow felt like, in my opinion. But Newcastle's a good team, man. They're a good team.
Yeah, they've done it not the way everybody expected it, perhaps, except a few high-profile signings, but they made some smart moves, and they are a solid team indeed. Speaking of somebody who is not solid, we give him a lot of crap over here in American Scouser. Brendan Rodgers classic happening against Bournemouth Galley, where they have the lead. It looks like they're going to blow my parlay, and then next thing you know, Bournemouth is winning, Leicester is losing again. What do you say to that? I know, last week when they beat Nottingham Forest and, convincingly, and they played well, it was Forest. And it was a lot of, these guys are still playing for Rodgers. Did they stop playing for Rodgers against Bournemouth towards the end, or is it just how they roll?
Well, I just think they're no good. I mean, you saw the goal. I mean, the first goal, right? Daka scores.
Tell us how you really feel about it.
I do. I mean, that's the truth, though. I mean, they bought that guy, right? The Sideshow Bob lookalike, Faiz or Face or Feast or Feces or whatever the hell his name is, right? He literally gets done down the
email
channel.
Address as always.
He
on the
looks
notes.
like he is literally running in quicksand. He is literally like it's going.
I think this is unfair. This just comes down to the fact that Galley hates David Luiz, and the guy looks a little bit like David Luiz.
Just bringing him flashbacks.
Some facts to that.
Yeah,
there are some truth to that, but I like the guy from Ghostbusters too, and I still rip on Seonchu, so it's all fair. No, but he gets done so poorly, and then they score the first goal, and the first one is bad enough, the Billings goal. But the second goal is like a minute and a half later, and it's just absolute capitulation by the defense. I think there's literally 3 separate mistakes that lead to Solanke just slipping the ball over to Christie and him banging it in. And before you know it, Bournemouth is too good, 2 up, 12 points. 2 points ahead of Liverpool, 2 spots ahead of us in the table. It's ridiculous.
Shut up, we have a game in hand, damn it.
In the table.
We have a game in hand, so I'm not counting that. But
it's
it is
unbelievable.
Shocking. They're still reeling in the goal differential from the 9-0 against Liverpool, but somehow have more points than us. We already had our weekly podcast recorded and depressed over that thought, so we're not going to go back to that. But next up, Bickler, City, Southampton, City business as usual.
I mean, they're just so fucking good. I hate it. Listen, 4 different goal scorers, 4 different people involved in the assist. They're just so bad. We talk about all the talks about Erling Haaland, and that's fair for good reason. They're so balanced. They're so good all over the pitch. I mean, I still am not sold 100% on those center backs, both from a quality standpoint and from a depth perspective. I mean, they've gotten better. They've gotten deeper everywhere. So, I mean, They've got that a little bit. I think that still can be a vulnerability of theirs, but they don't have to fucking worry about that when they're just bossing games the way they're bossing them right now. Like you could have like me back there and be fine. Like, man, they're maybe no,
maybe yeah. I can make it happen. I can.
If you shave the beard, no, they're
more
just
aerodynamic.
Something like that. Put me back there with my chins. No, they're so good across the board. They're dominant. They look dominant. I mean, they scored 4. They probably could have put 8 or 9 in.
If Mahrez scores on the first volley that he takes like 2 minutes into the game, Cancelo literally goes down as one of the greatest passes in the history of the Premier League. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's a miss, but he basically takes a ball on the fly on the half volley and pings it completely across the entire pitch and hits a running Mahrez in full stride, who sweeps it down off the volley off his left, and it misses the corner by like 3 feet. But it is so, like, the pass would have been better than the finish, and the finish would have been like goal of the year quality. And that's the thing. Their right back might be the second most skilled player on the entire side to De Bruyne. And that's how good
like Liverpool. Remember those days?
Yeah, those were the days.
Those were beautiful days.
I thought you were done with the depression session.
Those were the days.
City reminds me of, Bickler is not familiar with this concept, but when you're really beating somebody down on FIFA, towards the
I'm not familiar with a lot of concepts.
You kind of like try different things because you don't want to keep scoring like the easy goals, and you're trying to like get some fancy goals and stuff like that. It just feels like they're playing FIFA, but against Bickler.
You're saying that wasn't me making a comeback?
You're basically acknowledging that City is toying with the rest of the Premier League the way you do teenagers across the globe. Hey. Well played, old man. Well played.
Hey, like they say, you can only play the guy against you. So you just take on the team you play, and he can only be the guy who matches up online.
It's not Timucin's fault. He's 9.
Yeah, I mean,
shouldn't be up so late.
If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, kid. Next up, Chelsea Wolves. Once Chelsea goes up by a goal, I think they should have just called the game, knowing Wolves is never going to score. Gally, how deep of a trouble are they in?
They're so deep in trouble. They should be preparing for next year's relegation battle in the championship. Because there aren't enough.
They're really giving it to people tonight. So
there aren't enough Portuguese managers out there to figure it out. I thought the fact that they hired a caretaker manager who is more English than me, like literally, he gave a pre-match press conference and I couldn't understand a word he had to say, and it made me think to myself, like, what did all like the physios and the managers and the coaches and everyone, like, they just sat around smoking cigarettes in the dressing room, and we're like, nah, we're not going to do any of that. It won't work anyways. They stink. It doesn't matter. They can't score goals. Chelsea's not that much better. They didn't play really well, actually. Mason Mount was good, helped create a little bit. I know Pulisic scored a second goal, and then they got one late. Havertz, I think, scored late. But they were really, really poor from the jump. But they were playing Wolves, and I fear for Wolves. I think they are a team destined for the drop because they bought all the players they could, and they've gotten rid of their manager. I don't know what else in the we are failing playbook you can do other than those things to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of like called this in the preseason saying, goal scoring is going to be their issue, and it definitely has been. And like I say, the moment they're down by 1, you're like, yeah, this game is over, just because of what they got going. And my most hated Diego Costa has not solved the problems for them, which I am happy to see. Next up, Bickler, and this was one of the games that I really was looking forward to watch. And I know it wasn't high scoring, but still an entertaining game. Tottenham gets a huge 3 points. I mean, I know they did not like dominate or anything like that, but I feel like that's a huge win for them.
That's a big win, and I actually thought Brighton played quite well, to be quite honest. I thought they showed well out, and I thought they could have been disappointed not to take points off that match. So yeah, big time for Tottenham, because especially like historically speaking, in terms of what we normally see from this Tottenham side, this is a spot where they generally will drop points. All right. I mean, this is the difference between like a great Tottenham and what we expect of Tottenham. So like, I thought that was a really good sort of from a mental standpoint. That's big for them.
Yeah, I thought you're right. I think Brighton did deserve something out of the game, but did not get a whole lot. Well, I guess we have to come to what we had as match of the week. Our boys losing to Arsenal. We kind of talked a lot about this on our podcast. And if you are not regularly watching our podcast, every Monday and Thursday we have a live podcast. You see these three bozos that you see on the show on the Monday podcast. We designate three different bozos for the Thursday one. We record them both live, and they're more Liverpool based, whereas obviously this one is more general. But we talked a lot about this in terms of Liverpool's form. I know a lot of the fans, Gally, will blame Oliver, who was in shambles, and this whole refereeing mess is, but it's kind of hard to say Liverpool deserved a lot more out of this game.
Yeah, you concede 58 seconds in, you concede with less than 20 seconds to go in the half. You give up a penalty, whether or not it was warranted, after easy opportunities to clear in your own box, kind of dicking around and not doing the right thing there. You can blame nobody but yourself. At the same time, Arsenal came into the day knowing that if they got 3 points, they would be top of the table, and that they would lay a marker down that they at least deserve the right to be considered a contender to this point of the season. You know, the only real match they played so far, they played United and they lost. So this was a big match for them. They needed to finally put a marker down against a big club. And on Sunday, they did in a big way. They got 3 points against a club everyone had earmarked to finish second, regardless of how bad they were. They were just barely an underdog on the betting lines. They were a favorite up until Wednesday of last week. So to me, this was a big deal for Arsenal and just another kind of chink in the armor for Liverpool.
I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because I was going to ask you that. And Bickler, let me ask you, I mean, did this mean a lot for Arsenal in the grand scheme of things? Or, we're going to find out more when Liverpool faces City and how that game pans out in terms of being able to see if Arsenal is a legit contender for City. Because ultimately, that's what they're trying to prove.
I mean, we'll find out more, of course, when they play City, but I think they've already proved that. I mean, we're 10 weeks in, right? I mean, I think like us as Liverpool fans, we keep waiting for the season to start, right? And the fact is, the season has started. And they're 10 weeks in. They're coming off back-to-back big wins. I think form played out. They're in the form of their life right now. This is a Liverpool side that has one returning player anywhere near the level that they've played, and we just lost them for 8 weeks. So, I mean, credit to Arsenal. They came in, played their brand of football, and that's the thing, is they have a brand and we don't.
So in terms of like the long haul, Gally, I mean, if you're in, Arsenal's ballroom and they're like, hey, January, if we did this, we can compete with City. Do you see a player, a position, or something like that? Or they're still too far behind? We just got finished talking about how City is playing FIFA.
Yeah, is Haaland for sale?
You think like a solid like goal scorer would do the trick?
I don't even know if it's no. I mean, honestly, I think if you didn't take, unless you tell me that you're taking something massively away from City, I don't think there's anything close. I believe that City is going to shatter all of their own records. I think City will go on a run, win 15, 20 matches in a row at some point this season. I think City shatters 102 points. Like, I think City may not drop. City may go invincible. They may not lose. And I know it sounds crazy, but they look like a side that can do it. And I don't think anyone's anywhere close. I think, honestly, Arsenal should be proud, and they'll end up like holding up on the mantle at some point. Like, remember those 7 of the first 8 match weeks when we were in first place at the end of the week? Like, I think eventually City takes over first place, and it might be next weekend. But I think once they do, they don't relinquish it again. And I honestly think that, barring major injury, City's on their way to a historically special run.
I think the only thing that would perhaps stop them is when they kind of, everybody, they'll be so far ahead, I feel, that, everybody's heads, I know they rotate a lot, but still is going to be at the Champions League game coming up in like 2 days and
Yep,
3 days
I
and stuff
agree.
like that. And that's the only thing I feel like that will cause City to lose points along the way. But I think they'll be so far ahead that it's not going to matter. And that's why they will lose it in the
I,
first place, kind of deal.
I still think that at the end of the day, I said this earlier, I still think Spurs will probably finish. I still think Spurs may finish ahead of Arsenal. I think Arsenal has a blip in them coming back to earth as well. Because I think at some point, this defense won't play at this high level, and Arsenal will have some injuries as well. And as far as Arsenal's come along, they are a 12 to 13 person side, as we used to talk about Liverpool being. They have a starting 11 and maybe 2 actual subs that make real impact. If Vieira clicks, maybe that's 3. They don't have much more depth. So an injury to Gabriel, an injury to Saliba, an injury to Odegaard, an injury to Jesus, they're a completely separate side like any Premier League team outside of City. And I think that's why City runs away with this thing. I think they have 2 at every position.
So, what do you think, Bickler? The same question to you. What would Arsenal have to add? I think, like going back to the depth thing, I mean, obviously that would be one issue because, right now, when they play these Thursday games, there's still very easy lower level games where they can rotate a ton and not have a major issue. Those games are going to get tougher as they go into the further rounds. Do you think that's going to be like where they start having issues because they're going to be tired legs and they don't have the depth?
Yeah, probably. I think probably when they legitimately have to play 2 top teams a week, and they advance far enough in cups, and that'll be an issue for them. But I mean, listen, they're where we were in 1920, 18-19, where they've got a good young core and pieces they can build around mixed in with some veterans. So, I mean, they're if they can hit on a few key pieces in the transfer market going into next year, yeah, they're gonna be tough to deal with for a while.
Next up, let's go Crystal Palace, Leeds United. We were talking about this actually in terms of like Palace's form, and maybe they were kind of like maybe slightly overrated due to their early performances in the season. So this is kind of a big win for them, Gally.
Yeah, it was a big win. I mean, I thought this was a drab of a match. I know it was on TV. I don't know if people were watching this one. I was going back and forth between the two of them. At times Leeds look good. I will say I can definitely see a form. I can see what Leeds is trying to build upon, and they finally had, I think, what would Jesse Marsh would probably say was his best 11 to call on. With Paul's buddy Bamford leading the line finally up top.
He's back.
And no, but you could see a difference though in their attack. They looked much better with him playing through the middle and Rodrigo out wide. You mix in the Sinisteri guy once he's not picking up crazy red cards for blocking off second yellows. And the Aronson kid, for all we joked about, will the American kid, was it too much money? That first goal, I mean, he literally dribbles through 5 players, bangs one off the post. And if it had gone in, it would have been a worldy goal. And instead, it was just a hell of a play that sets up a goal for his team. He's had a great start to his campaign. Crystal Palace, to me, looks like they have more talent than the product on the pitch. And I know everyone loves to give Vieira all this credit for making Hodgson's guys look better. I'm not sure they look any better than when Roy Hodgson was the manager. They just every once in a while squeak out a win or two more. I don't think Vieira is the answer there, actually. I think we all got all warm and fuzzy about Patrick Vieira to start this year. And I think Crystal Palace is right about where they're going to be all year, a bottom half of the table club that still doesn't have a goal scorer, and they got a guy who is their talisman who basically hates playing for their club.
I think, and we'll probably during the World Cup get a chance to go back to our, preseason forecasts and go back to see what we got right, what we were wrong. Probably the latter more than the former. But I think, Vieira has been able to I think Zaha is the thing that they have to solve there and figure out what they want to do with that and how to use them and are we going to build around them? Are we going to move him and get that money to get some other pieces? I think that's one thing they have to solve there. And but at the same time, he is the one that brings them a lot of points. So it's kind of like they
Right.
gotta make the call, I think, is the issue. West Ham 3, Fulham 1. West Ham finally getting some wins over here. What do you make of that one, Bickler?
It's a good one. Another controversial handball situation. I mean, West Ham definitely looks more fluid, and it looks like, they hit on the striker, which I think is going to be a huge help for them. But the main, I mean, the fact that they're getting, I know that Bowen scored on a penalty, right? But I thought he was much more involved the last 2 weeks than he has the rest of the season. That's been the huge problem. Very much like we've had a problem at Liverpool with how we're playing Mo Salah. It looked like they were playing Jared Bowen a little bit differently, and he was on an island and there was a disconnect. And it looks like he's gotten back into the flow, and they're at their best when he's at the center of everything, whether it's his work rate out wide or whether he's drifting in the middle. And it looks like they're getting a little bit of that back, and I think that's going to be big for them.
Nobody is happier than Gally, who has like a major crush on Bowen himself, right?
Man's good. And for those fantasy players out there, Paul made a good comment. He is now on penalties. You can drop your Declan Rices.
Well, we'll tease your show over here where you give tips with Mateusz over here that clearly Bickler and I do not pay attention to based on our rankings over here. Let's go to the next game over here. Everton 1, United 2. I mean, Everton kind of like took the lead and had a shot at this, but it almost felt like it was going to be United all along. Ronaldo gets his 700th, and thank God that conversation is over. What do you make of that game, Gally?
Someone had to win, or someone had to draw, or some supporter had to be happy after that match was over. In some ways, good on Everton. They come out, they score early, they go all Everton on themselves, make a huge mistake, and then they get to be the punchline and the fodder to be the club that gave up Ronaldo's 700th. I thought Ten Hag after the match just covering himself in more embarrassment. I feel like every time he talks about Ronaldo, he just sounds stupider. Like he sounds less like a guy in control every time he talks about Ronaldo. I couldn't bring Ronaldo on because we couldn't embarrass a player. You want to know what's fucking embarrassing a player? Not playing an all-time great against a shit team, sitting him at Old Trafford against anyone. Like, you're starting Christian Eriksen one match through the center in a false 9. That's not an embarrassment. But making him play against City in a drubbing would be, I mean, come on. Like, I just feel like Ten Hag has just proven in some ways tactically he has all the mindset of why they wanted him to be manager of United. Yet every time he opens his mouth, he sounds like a Muppet, which makes you realize he's still not ready to be manager of United, which makes the Liverpool supporter in me all warm and fuzzy.
What do you make of that? I mean, Bickler, I almost feel like he initially wanted Ronaldo there, then realized, holy shit, this is not the Ronaldo I thought was going to be the Ronaldo. And really, it's not in his plans in terms of how he wants to play. Ronaldo clearly does not fit. Can Ronaldo finish? Yeah, go ahead.
I think that all hinges on how much say he actually had, which I think is very little. So I think if you're a manager with very little say in the situation, you're going to roll with that the best way you can, right? And that is pretend like you want him there. I think Gally's spot on though. Like every time he talks about it, it gets worse, and you're just like, dude, stop, just stop. Like you're like,
move
on.
Ronaldo, we know Ronaldo, he's a great player. Next question.
Yeah. It's awkward, man. It's very cringy, and it is weird.
It always came across to me like Paul said, he was a guy who at the beginning, I want Ronaldo here, because it looked like Ronaldo was going to be here, and then it looked like this son of a bitch is never coming back to training. So I'm going to start digging him in the papers and saying things like, well, if you don't train, you don't play. And then I'm going to bench him, and I'm going to not start him in this big match. And then it was getting close to the end of the transfer window, and he was like, oh, shit, I'm going to have this son of a bitch at training on Tuesday. Like, I better fucking – and then you heard the beep, beep, beep. And then he walked up to the podium, and he was like, hey, have you heard of this guy, CR7? He's amazing. And when he gets his fitness under him, it's like he's not fit.
Yeah,
He's
he's not. Yeah, I was
150
gonna say
years
what.
old, going to be fitter than all of us combined. And like,
You guys think he? I mean, anybody kind of like goes for his services in January and I guess like rescues him and United and Ten Hag, or he's going to be there all year? Bickler, real quick. Yes, no, maybe he stays, he leaves. They're stuck
I
with
think
him.
he stays. I think they have to stick with something. They can't continually. I
That's
think
true
at some
too.
point change does you more damage than some sort of consistency, even if it's crap consistency.
How about you,
I
Gab?
think it takes,
Stays and goes.
I think it takes a massive injury somewhere at a club that feels like they're a goal scorer away. Like literally, it would take like a club in the Champions League who thought they could win it, have a huge injury, maybe at the World Cup or something, and say, you know what, that's a guy on a short-term fix we could throw money at and make work. But other than that, I don't see why anyone else would. He was offered to every club who could afford his wages, and every single one said no thanks.
Yeah, really, I agree. Unless there's something major in the World Cup that affects like a big club that is, they're like, we're not gonna get there without a striker, and this guy is available. We'll pay the wages for like 4 or 5 months. What the hell, kind of a deal. Last one, and geez, this was today's last week. We matched Big Ten's last game, and they sure didn't save the best for last. Forest won, Villa won. Who should be more worried? Bickler.
Good Lord, dude. I
Bear
think
in mind, you
Villa.
already have a lot of enemies in the Villa fandom.
I mean, just the problem is you've dumped so much money into that side. Like, how is this what it is? Like, there's so much quality in that team. It's like you're hanging your hat on a fucking 40-year-old Ashley Young to like pip you points off this team. Like, oh, dude, I think both clubs are in for it, but that's a really bad draw for Villa.
Yeah, I mean, this should have been an easy. I mean, not an easy, I guess, but this should have been when you're penciling down points. You would think Gerard had this as a 3 against Forest, right, Gally?
You'd think so, but I mean, honestly, in anything in watching his managerial time in the Premier League, I don't think the man can ever pencil in a victory against anyone. I don't think they've earned the right to feel like they're favored to play anyone because they don't have a style. They don't have an attacking formation. And, to Paul's point, the amount of money that they've spent over the 3 windows since he's been there, and then you add in on top of that the moves that he's made, like go from 3 up top to switch to us playing with a single striker, to rip up your entire formation to play with 2 strikers. You rip the captain's armband off of Tyrone Mings, yet then you trot him back out there the next week and start him in a major match. Like, it just, the messages it seems like it sends to the team, to me, seems like a guy who doesn't have a plan or any direction. And it feels like a manager who's just throwing things up against the wall to see what sticks. And I can't imagine in a league like this that's so tactically set up that is helping a bunch of collective young players figure out how to be better as a collective unit. And I hate to say this, there is a lot of talent there. It does not look to me like it works. And that usually takes someone with experience to make it work. And I don't think he has the time to clear out all the players to make it work. So unfortunately, I think it'll be another manager at Villa that figures out how to make that lineup of characters happen.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, unless they get a lot of poor results, I don't see a change happening there. I mean, Forest just gave a contract extension, which we know how those sometimes go. But I mean, they just gave a freaking 4-year extension there, so I don't know if they're gonna give only 4 weeks. I feel like these two managers will have right after the World Cup a month or so to show if they were able to put something together, and if it does not, I know if I'm like the club president, I'm making some moves because it might be too late. Otherwise, you're already going to be into like February and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Forest has done a ton of moves. They got to put those pieces together and see if it fits. And Villa, I agree. I mean, I think that squad should be a lot higher in this league, and they just are not. Well, as always, we do our studs and duds of the week. First off, let's start with the studs of the week. Bickler, let's start with you on this one. Who was your stud?
I want to clarify that I feel like I need to shower directly after I make this pick, but I'm going to go with Antony at United. They've struggled with any sort of offensive fluency this year. He scored 3 goals in 3 games, and the one he had this week was just a phenomenal finish. So you can say what you want. They paid outrageous money for the kid. And so with that comes a heavy crown, and he's holding it so far.
Fair.
Gally, who was your stud?
My stud of the week was Newcastle's Bruno Guimaraes, the Brazilian midfielder who the heck knows how long he'll be at Newcastle. They say he loves it there, and the supporters love him, and he loves the city and wants to stay and see them become a winner. There's also rumors that Real Madrid and Barcelona are interested this summer, and he could have his head turned. So those are the stories you love. But the kid had 2 goals, one with a header, one with his foot. He basically is at the center of everything that they do that's good. He can play deep. He creates. He links up play. He's just a joy to watch, and he's got a little bite to him too, which is nice, for, people. I think the South American, Brazilian attacking flair midfielders get a little bit of shtick for being a little too much like Neymar. And he's got a 2-foot tackle in him, which I kind of enjoy on top of it. So for that alone, he is my stud of the week.
My stud of the week, and this is not based on performance, but more importance of like the 3 points they got and how important and how tough of 3 points is Tottenham. I mean, you could argue, and we talked about earlier in the episode, that Brighton probably deserved to get something out of that, but Tottenham hung in there. I think getting a clean sheet against Brighton is kind of a big deal. They're like a very good attack inside, and they were able to be not the regular Spurs that you're used to. It was a very anti-Spurs performance where they hung in there, got the goal, got a 1-0 win. I don't think a lot of teams are going to get out of Brighton with 3 points. So I thought it was huge for them. So I am making them my stud of the week. And next up, for every stud, there is a dud. So let's do our duds of the week. Gally, we'll start with you on this one. Who was your dud?
So I'll wrap this one up. It's an entire club. It's players, managers, front office, even old man Diego Costa himself. It is Wolverhampton Wanderers. If you wonder whether or not your Wolves will attack and be good, find a Grandpa Wolf to take care of them. And that's what they've done. They brought in the oldest looking wolf on the planet, and he got through 25 minutes, picked up a yellow card, and then got injured and had to come out of the match. They are absolutely terrible going forward. If there's a new manager bounce, someone needs to fill them in that they have a new manager, because they made Chelsea look like they were bright and had all kinds of ideas and attack minded. And that is difficult at Chelsea, even if Graham Potter is the manager now. So my dud of the week 100% is Wolves. They may continue to hold that mantle for some time.
Vitor Pereira, people. I might just start a new thread, tag both of them, and put them together. But I think that's the guy they need. Bickler, who is your dud?
It is Fulham's Andreas Pereira, and this makes me feel so happy. It makes up for my Antony pick.
I sense
really
joy
does.
in that selection, yes.
Because I already hate this man, so I've been waiting all year for an opportunity to do this for this. So you probably are like, Bickley, why are you picking a dud of the week who scored? Well, A, because I can, and B, because directly after he scored, he made the most boneheaded penalty you could possibly make in order to get West Ham back into this game, which just further proves he actually has bird brain. Like, he's just an absolute chicken. So, for those that didn't watch the match, corner kick, he gets into it with Dawson. They're tussling. The ref pulls him aside, says, knock it off. Can't have your hands on his shirt, around his neck, etc. Go back. They do it again. Dawson just puts his hands up and looks at the ref like, are you kidding me? And so he pulls Pereira again and talks to him and says, essentially knock it off. goes back a third time, and the ball's in play. And he literally tackles Dawson as if the ref is not watching this. Like, you know,
Probably
it's
nothing
like,
but.
it's like if you were caught in the kitchen trying to steal cookies by your mom twice, are you going to go back a third time when she's still in the living room and can see you through the door? Like, it's like the most ridiculous thing ever. Anyway, I just loved it because it's so on brand for Andres Pereira, who's supremely talented, but also just supremely stupid.
My dud of the week is Brendan Rodgers and Leicester City. If you're following American Scouser TV and watching our morning coffee show, our friend Mecca especially always takes joy in, but not definitely making fun of Rodgers, but always making fun of Rodgers. I think it was like a vintage Rodgers Leicester move to take the lead and maybe finally building some momentum. Mind you, it started with a win against Forest. But it was a solid performance, even though against this Forest, you're like, okay, it's a building block. I know the commentary was all like, these guys are still playing for Brandon and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, they have the lead. You think, okay, they're putting something together. Maybe these guys are playing for Brandon. And it just goes Leicester afterwards, and they concede 2 goals. And yet again, lose points and get nothing out of a winning position, and they have to be up there. Got to pull up the stats. I know they were kind of like towards the top, but I mean, Brandon has his eyes set on that man, like in terms of like the most points lost from a winning position. So I am selecting them as my dud of the week, Brandon Rodgers and his Leicester City. And that is it for us this week for match week 10. Next week's match of the week is going to see our boys again, this time taking on Manchester City. Boys, I'm assuming we're not really looking very forward to this. Are we, Bickler?
Absolutely not. I'm thinking I may find some reason to be extremely busy doing something else. But I also would not do that because this is unfortunately my life, and I accept that for what it is. Liverpool was the reason I got out of bed on some of my darkest days. So on their darkest days, I will suffer and try to come to the table with a decent attitude every Monday.
Do you put a glimmer of hope in Reds fans like us, Gally?
I question my life if this is a decent attitude. I mean, sorry. Wait. I digress. I apologize. I got caught up in the idea that this is decent. I'm wondering what the world in North Carolina is like those other 6 days of the week that they get the
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
I think you guys already know.
I think we do.
You don't want the audience to know, bro.
We just exactly. No, I don't really feel that great about this match. I wish they had given me a little bit more hope in the performance yesterday, and I don't think there's anything they could do Wednesday against Rangers that's going to change the way that I feel. So they're just going to have to come out. But, you know, we've looked terrible before and shown up and put in world-class performances. There's no question this side has it in them to show up. So maybe Liverpool shows up and does a Jekyll and Hyde on them. I just don't know that with the mixture of the confidence of the squad and the injuries they have, that they have the horses to get it done. But to Paul's point, we don't doubt them. We just show up and ride with them.
Yeah, I mean, we just got to talk about Liverpool's form, and then after like talking all that great stuff about City, but that's why they play the games, kids, and that's why I'm hoping there's a glimmer of hope. And if any game that this team will try to shake itself off, it's probably against City. I mean, this rivalry over the last 3-4 seasons here, so let's hope we get something out of them. But that will be our match of the week, and we will recap the entire week as always. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what you think, what we got right, what we got wrong. And we'll see you guys again next week as we recap match week 11. Have a great week, guys.